Hey everybody, Eric here. And today I want to show you how to build kind of a complex looking model like you see behind me here using just a single component. So first of all, why would you want to do that? And the answer is you might not want to. Using a single component has some advantages and some disadvantages. More than anything, I think this is kind of a really quick way to play around with ideas, so to build something conceptual, but also for me to sort of practice my skills with using inferencing, snapping, the move copy. So I think it helps if I show you instead of tell you. So let's just get in and let's sort of build some more elements to this building that I started, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So let's do it. So this is my model. I just wanted to kind of show you really quick. I wanted to kind of prove to you that this was all done using just a single cube component. So there's my component. If I open up my components window, you can see I'm in model, and that was an old one. So if I go model info, purge unused, there you go. So there it is. I've got just my person or my people here, and I've got just this cube, which you see it's already sitting here. So I'm going to delete that. Anyway, that's it. Just one component. Let's go take it a step further. And if I actually go into that component and I modify it, I'm just going to use the nonlinear scale by vertical. And you can see you get something a little cool, but not exactly what I was intending. So when I say you may not want to do this method, you're probably thinking exactly, well, why would you want to do that? Well, you wouldn't want to modify the inside of a component because what you're going to do, it's going to modify it to everything. Instead, what we do is we modify the outside of the component. So let me do a little example off to the side here. I'm going to pull this cube over. This is, again, that same cube. And I'm going to practice, like I said, we're going to use, you can use the icons. If you're an icon user, I am a keyboard shortcut user, so M for move. And I'm going to Option or Control to make that copy. So that's that modifier. So this is what you're going to see is I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I'm just grabbing this cube, I'm making a copy of it, and then I get to decide what I want to do. I can scale it from the side, or I can squish it and make it thinner, or I can pull it and make it bigger, make it taller. Or I can grab it from the corner and do a uniform scale, and then again, hitting that same Option Alt, I'm going to modify that to create a uniform scale, but from the center point instead of from the edge. So that's what that modifier does. So this is really cool. In this case, then what I could do is just use this scale tool, and then just, if I need to, I can turn on my X-ray mode. So I can grab a grip, one of these grips that I can't see, and I just snap it to that geometry that's already there. Now, if I wanted to, if I knew exactly how tall I wanted to, and I didn't know what the dimensions were, but I knew how big this cube was, I could say I want this to be 5 times taller. So that's how big that is. Or I could go 7 times taller. So if you know a proportion that you're working with, you can always just enter the number in that way. In this case, what I want to do is also grab this cube here. I'm going to make a copy, and then I'm just playing around, so I'm just going to divide this by something like 6. Nope, maybe too much. Divide it by 4. And so this is kind of cool because even you can do sort of these complex arrays. So even with this cube group, now I've got something where I've got sort of different versions. If I wanted something to be twice as big at something, I could just go ×2. And again, why would you want to do this? I'm not sure, but if you're doing something sort of somewhat conceptual, or you're just building something like a spaceship parts or something like this, this could just be a really quick way to create a little bit of variety, again, using just the same component. And I'm just copying, stretching, scaling, rotating, and having a little bit of fun. I'm actually just kind of really thinking more about how something looks than, again, how big or how the exact dimensions that it should be. So let's go back to this house here, or this building, and use something that's maybe a little bit more of a concrete, literally, example, because I need the finish it out with doing the sidewalk. So I'm going to grab my cube, same cube. Just going to do the same technique that I just showed you in that little demo. I'm going to turn my X-ray mode on so I can find a corner that's easy for me to snap to. And then if I need to, I can turn that X-ray mode on again. I'm just using that with a keyboard shortcut. and I want to toggle that. I want to grab that grip and snap it in place. So I'm using the building already, the geometry that's already there as my reference. I'm going to copy this over. I don't know how many I want because, again, I'm not working to any sort of real dimensions. Just say times 10 to see how far that gets me. I like to work in even numbers. And then there you go. So I can select, depending on if everything is grouped already and protected, then what I could do is a really quick way to select all these is you could come over here and say select all instances. So you can see every instance of this component. If I'm using the same module for my score, for my pavers, I can just say select one and it'll select all of them. I'm going to deselect that one, of course, that's my original. And then I'm going to make a group out of this. And then from there, I'm going to just stretch it into place. So again, I don't know how big that is. I don't know how big it needs to be. It just looks okay. If I wanted to change that number of modules, of course, I can change that by scaling it, but I'm okay with the way this looks. So again, I'm going to copy that. We're going to kind of do that times 2. Excuse me, let's try that again. I want to do sort of multiple modules. So this last module here, I might say like, well, this is where like the tree grates are going to go. And sometimes you'll see a different size paver. So in this case, all I need to do is instead of redoing that array, I'm just using scale by the sort of nonlinear grip, scaling along the red axis. And then I just say 0.5, which is half of my other one. And I know that instead of 10, I have 20 in here. So I can group those together as well. And if I wanted to make that a little bit longer, I just grab another one of those modules. So that's pretty cool. I just finished my sidewalk out. Again, if I did want for some reason to differentiate the sidewalk between from what I see here, there's 2 ways to do that. If I just want to differentiate the color, I could come over here and actually paint the outside of my sidewalk. I'm going to make sure I'm showing my textures and come over here and I could paint my sidewalk module there. So again, still one component. If I edit it, the whole model, everything, everything edits. But you can paint the outside of a component if you don't have any color already applied to it. So some people say you really should paint the inside of the component. Of course, if I go in and paint the inside of the component here, like if I do this, what it's going to do is it'll paint everything that same color. And of course, maybe I don't want everything to be that color. Maybe I want certain things to be certain colors, even though I'm using one component. I can still do that just by painting the outside of stuff. If I wanted to paint this sign here, for example, I could just come over here and paint, or I could paint the whole thing, or I could come into the group and paint that sign. Let me make that a color that you can see. There we go. So again, single component made every single piece of this model, and I've differentiated it just literally by using only one tool, which is the scale tool. That's it. All I did was just scale it, and I'm also just snapping it to the geometry that's already there, or I'm using the measurements box to say how far I want it to go. If I wanted to do that as 0.5 or 0.75 or something like that, I can just create more variations of this same module using just scaling by a scale factor. And that's pretty cool. Obviously, this is geometric, so it works that I'm building a model that sort of makes sense by just using a cube and rectangles and things like that. You can, of course, go organic. If you wanted to bring in 2 components and you have an arch, I mean, think about what I could do with just 2 components. An arch and a cube could do quite a bit. So I'm stripping this down to its bare minimum, which is just 1 cube. But you can of course push this sort of idea or this technique as far as you want to go. And of course, you don't have to stop there. You can also make components of groups. So in this case, I can make a component and call this doors and windows. And then now I have 2 components in the model. I have 1 cube, and I have, in this case, and let me make sure that I'm actually snapping this to the right point. Do there times 2. And you can see now, if I opened up my components window, there should be 3 in this model. There is the people as before. There is my cube, like when we started. And now I have a new module, which is a new component, which is this sort of grouping that's created that I use to create the doors and the windows. So again, now I'm starting with just one component, but of course I'm not going to limit myself to that. It makes sense that I would make, if I knew something was going to repeat, like in this case, I wanted to move this window, or if I wanted to scale this, I could do this, having this be a component group, because I know that it repeats, is definitely sort of a smart modeling technique. So I'm going to stop there because you get the idea. The whole point is that it's a simple way to model. It's super fast, and it's also super flexible. Because if you find yourself modeling and then you need to do something a little bit different, you can always make a component unique. And then that component is no longer going to, if you have to go in and actually edit the inside of the component rather than the outside, then it's not going to blow up your model like you saw when I first stretched it, when I first was playing around with that original cube. So the idea of exploding components, making them unique, painting the outside of them, and of course adding more than just the single cube, you know, it's a pretty robust process. Again, not something you're going to build a house and then send it to construction documents, but something where if you're building a stage set or you're building something for game art or you're just doing some visualization and you're just having some fun and exact dimensions do not matter, this technique, give it a shot. So speaking of give it a shot, give a comment below. Let me know what you think. Let's keep this conversation going on. Am I crazy? Is this stupid? I'd love to hear from you and your experience. If you haven't tried it, give it a shot. Let me know what you think. And as always, I'm going to leave you with a reminder to give ourselves that like if you like the video. If not, don't. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. That way you get the latest content every single week that comes out. And of course, lastly, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.